Emma was sitting in a conference room, surrounded by focused eyes and the clacking of keyboards. There was a thick stack of documents on the table, a cold cup of coffee, and the phone suddenly lit up. The name Dylan was clearly displayed on the screen. She was momentarily surprised. Her husband rarely called during work hours, unless it was absolutely necessary. Thinking he just wanted to ask about his business trip or something at home, Emma gently retreated from the conference table and walked into the empty hallway. She pressed the answer button, a small smile on her lips, but the voice on the other end instantly extinguished all warm feelings. "I want a divorce," Dylan said, his voice so calm it was cold. Before she could react, he added, "I sold the apartment. You'll have to find a new place to live." No explanation, no guilt, just a statement as clear as a weather report. Emma was stunned. She could hear the blood pounding in her ears, her hand gripping the phone as if to keep the truth from shattering. "You selling the house?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Yeah," Dylan chuckled. "Nicole and I need the money to start over. She doesn't deserve to live in a place like this." Nicole. The name fell on Emma like a weight. There was no doubt about it. There was a third person. The man who had slept beside her every night, who had said he loved her, had betrayed her. And now he was saying her, as if Emma were the one who had come in between them. The hallway was long now. Everything around her was blurry. But Emma didn't cry. She swallowed the pain, kept her voice steady. "Yeah, really." That was all she said. She wouldn't give Dylan the privilege of hearing her sobs, wouldn't let him see the crack. In that moment, something inside her broke, but not weakness. It was an illusion. Emma had lived in a world where she believed that love was loyalty, where she and Dylan had built a home out of sacrifice and trust. But now she understood. There were people who only knew how to build until they found someone worth it in their eyes. Emma stood in the empty hallway, the meeting still going on outside, but inside her, a storm was raging. She knew everything had changed, and from that moment on, she would no longer be the naive wife. Emma and Dylan had been together for 6 years. 6 years of making breakfast together, of bickering over trivial things and then hugging each other to make up. 6 years of believing that no matter what, they would make it through. Their 2-bedroom apartment downtown was more than just a place to live. It was a symbol of everything they built together. Emma remembered the first time she walked into it, with bare walls and dusty floors, imagining a home where love would last forever. But gradually, small signs began to appear, subtle but piercing. Dylan began to avoid the subject of finances, brushing it off with "I can handle it," or "we'll figure that out later." Conversations about long-term plans, about joint accounts, about saving for a car or investing began to disappear. There were nights when Dylan didn't come home at all, without warning. Dinners became less frequent. Hugs became less frequent. Sometimes Emma would wake up in the middle of the night, turn to her side, touch the cold pillow, and tell herself, he must be busy again. She didn't want to believe that their relationship was falling apart, so she just ignored it, until it all fell apart. But amid the rubble, a flash of light flashed through Emma's mind, a seemingly trivial memory that now carried unexpected weight. It was the time they refinanced their apartment loan together a few months ago. She remembered Dylan rushing to sign it, so he could make it to the meeting. Emma was the one who had talked to the finance person, who had read every clause carefully and suggested transferring the apartment ownership to her in order to get a preferential interest rate. Dylan nodded vaguely, signed the papers without asking any questions. At the time, Emma had simply thought, we're husband and wife. There's nothing to worry about. But now, that detail had become the most powerful weapon in her hands. That apartment, which Dylan thought he had sold and abandoned without mercy, had long been Emma's property. He had no right to sell it, no right to kick her out, no right to laugh at her pain. And it was what Dylan had failed to notice that would cost him. Emma sat quietly in her hotel room, the city lights filtering through the thin curtains, creating pale streaks of light on the floor. She didn't cry. Her tears seemed to have dried up, or maybe her emotions had shifted to another state, a cold, empty place that quietly formed a will. Her hand scrolled through her contacts and stopped at a familiar name, Claire. Her best friend since college, also a good lawyer and the only person Emma trusted at the moment. When Claire picked up, Emma didn't beat around the bush. She told her story, concisely, clearly, leaving out no detail. Claire listened intently, and when Emma got to Dylan's claim that he had sold the apartment, Claire's tone changed. What did he do? Claire asked, unable to hide her shock. Emma, he has no right to sell the apartment. It's in your name alone. The sentence was like a knife cutting through the fog in Emma's head. She sat up straight, feeling for the first time that day that she was truly in control. Claire continued, if he has taken the money from the buyer, then it is fraud. I will immediately notify the buyer that the transaction is void, and I will send Dylan a legal notice, warning him of the consequences if he continues to act rashly. Emma nodded, even though she knew Claire could not see it. The relief that swelled in her chest was not joy, but cold reassurance. Dylan thought he had written her out of the life they had once had, that he could walk out of the marriage with Nicole in his arms and a pile of money in his pocket. But he had forgotten one thing. Emma was no longer the blind woman she had been. She was no longer looking for apologies. She was no longer asking why. She was transforming from betrayed to calculating. When she hung up, Emma did not sit there sighing like she usually did. She opened her laptop and wrote down every detail, every word Dylan had said on the call. She made a to-do list. She prepared the paperwork, flipped through the refinancing agreement. There were no more tears, no more dreams, just a woman silently putting the pieces together for a new game, one she would not lose again. That afternoon, when Emma set down her bags after a long business trip, the apartment was strangely quiet. Everything was still where it had been. Dylan's jacket was slung over the chair. His shoes were thrown aside by the door. But something was different. Not in the room, in her. She knew the confrontation was inevitable, and she was ready. Sure enough, before evening had passed, Dylan burst through the door in a human fury. His face was red, and he was clutching the email Claire had emailed him. "What the hell is this?" he roared, waving the stack of papers as if it could set the room on fire. "Are you trying to say I have no right to sell the apartment? It's ours." Emma stood up straight, her eyes unblinking. She walked slowly to the filing cabinet, pulled out a prepared stack of papers, and placed it on the table between them. "No, Dylan," she said, her voice frighteningly calm. "This apartment has been in my name since we refinanced. You signed it, you just didn't read it." Dylan froze, his eyes scanning the words. After a moment, when he realized what she said was true, he hissed, "You think you're so smart? This doesn't change anything. I have a buyer. The deal is done. You're just making a scene." Emma didn't move. "The deal is void. The buyer has been notified. And if you don't return the money, you'll face fraud charges." Dylan sneered, a half smile of contempt. But this time, it didn't make Emma feel as small as before. She stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. "If you spent a penny of that money, it wouldn't have ended with a letter." Dylan stepped back a little, but still tried to salvage the situation. "You're overreacting. You can't throw me out of this house." "Actually, I can," Emma said, her voice even and firm. "This apartment is mine. You're here only because I let you. And that trust and your role is gone." Dylan sputtered, running out of arguments to hold on to. But Emma didn't need to say anything else. In that moment, she didn't just stand her ground. She took back full control of her life. No more shaking. No more waiting for approval. She was the one making the decisions, and Dylan was left with the confusion of someone who thought he was in control, only to realize he never understood the rules of the game. Emma was sitting at the dining table, the last light of the day filtering through the windows onto the divorce papers she was going over one last time. The apartment was neat and quiet, every corner beginning to feel like hers, no longer the echo of years of being overwhelmed. But then the sound of the door opening shattered that atmosphere. Dylan walked in, and behind him was Nicole, a woman whose name Emma had only ever heard of like a knife. Nicole linked arms with Dylan confidently, looking around as if she were assessing a new property. "Oh, this is a nice place," she smiled faintly. "We're staying here, aren't we?" Emma stood up, putting down her pen, her heart pounding but her face still impassive. "No, you're not," she said, her eyes fixed on Nicole. "Actually, Dylan's not here anymore. Nicole frowned, turning to Dylan in confusion. What is she talking about? Dylan pursed his lips, about to say something, but Emma spoke first. I'll speak for him, because he doesn't seem to be very good at explaining. Dylan tried to sell the place behind my back, forgetting that it wasn't in his name. He signed the papers last month when we refinanced. Legally, I'm the sole owner. Nicole turned to Dylan, her expression shifting from bewilderment to shock. Wait, you told me this was your place. You said you sold it. You got the money. She stopped mid-sentence, her voice growing louder. Are you lying? Dylan forced a smile. It's not that simple. Let me explain. But Emma didn't let on. It's not. She curled her lips. He was going to sell the place, take the money to start over with you, and leave me without an apology. Only he didn't expect that everything he signed would come back to haunt him. Nicole stood frozen, her eyes shifting from Dylan to Emma and back to the man she thought she was building a new life with. Did you really take the money? She asked, her voice noticeably cold. Dylan stammered, his hands raised as if to hold her back. I'll handle it. I just need time. No, I need honesty. And I clearly don't have that, Nicole interrupted, pulling her hand out of Dylan's and turning away, walking quickly out the door without looking back. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving an eerie silence. Dylan stood in the middle of the room, eyes glazed, hands hanging limply, like someone who had just woken up from a coma with nothing left to hold on to. Emma said nothing more. She didn't need to. She had already proven everything she needed to prove with sobriety, with paperwork, and with the fortitude of someone who had been pushed to the bottom, but refused to stay there. Dylan was no longer the one to decide. He was just a bystander, watching everything slip away because he misjudged the woman who once called him her husband. After Nicole left, Dylan felt like all his energy had been drained. He slumped down on the sofa, his face pale, his eyes blank as if he no longer recognized the world around him. Emma watched him for a few seconds, then quietly walked towards the kitchen, where she had prepared a thick file. She placed it in front of him, her voice unusually calm. Here are the divorce papers. Claire has prepared them. You can read them carefully, or not. But I advise you to sign them soon. Dylan stared at the file, then raised his head, his voice hoarse. Do you really want to end it like this? Emma did not answer immediately. She looked at him for a long time, her eyes no longer angry or resentful, but understanding mixed with determination. It's not that I wanted it like this, she replied. It's that you chose it. A long time ago. Dylan lowered his head, clasped his hands tightly, his back hunched as if a burden had suddenly fallen on his shoulders. He picked up the pen and signed. No more resistance, no more trying to say anything more. Emma nodded, took the stack of papers, and walked over to the filing cabinet, putting it away. When the door closed, an old chapter closed with it. From that day on, she began a new life, right in the same space. Emma removed the wedding photos from their frames, packed them with a few of Dylan's belongings, and sent them to him in a single box. She ordered some green plants, changed the color of the bed sheets, and threw away the heavy coffee table he had insisted on keeping. The changes were small, but they made the apartment feel brighter, lighter, and most importantly, hers. In the evenings, instead of listening to lifeless conversation or Dylan's keyboard tapping away at his games, she turned on some soft jazz, made a cup of tea, and sat by the window, letting the cool breeze hit her face. She started rereading her favorite books that he had once dismissed as a waste of time. She kept a journal, took early morning walks, and learned that silence no longer meant loneliness. Gradually, Emma felt peace creep into her every breath. The self-esteem she had lost during those months of trying to hold on to someone who no longer loved her was now pieced back together, piece by piece, with her own confidence and composure. She no longer needed apologies. She no longer needed anyone to prove that she was worthy of love. With each passing day, the apartment became not a place associated with painful memories, but a beginning of a new journey, a journey where she held her own hand, walked straight and free. I didn't just get my apartment back. I got myself back. The words echoed in Emma's head as she sat by the living room window, the afternoon light filtering through the glass, casting a soft golden glow over everything around her. The apartment was completely different now. Not because of the new furniture or the repainted walls, but because the feeling inside had changed. It was no longer the prison of a rotten marriage, no longer the breath of lonely nights waiting for her husband to come home, no longer the setting for attempts to hold on to someone who had long since left. It was hers, every tile, every painting, even the quiet night air. Looking back, Emma realized she had underestimated her own worth. She had thought that love meant accepting sacrifice, that silence was the way to maintain peace, that as long as she was good enough, Dylan would stay. But in the end, it was that silence that had hurt her more than any words. And Dylan, the one who said he would never leave her, was the first to retreat when life became inconvenient. But instead of letting the pain drown her, Emma chose to stand up, chose to find every piece of the real person inside her, the woman who once dreamed, who once loved with all her heart, who once believed in kindness. She began to live on her own terms, not to prove anything to anyone, but to see that she deserved peace. She no longer lived according to the rhythm of others. Every morning when she woke up, Emma made herself coffee, read a few pages of her favorite book, then opened the window to let in the sunlight, which she used to close the curtains because Dylan slept late. In the evening, she cooked a simple meal, listened to her favorite music, and let her heart drift to gentle places. No longer straining herself to please anyone. No longer trying to hold on to something that didn't belong to her. For the first time in years, Emma felt truly free. Not just because Dylan was gone, but because she had chosen to leave behind the broken version of herself. And in this space where she had once thought she was a fragment of her past, was now the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter of freedom, of loving herself, and of days when she no longer had to ask, "Am I good enough?" Because she knew she deserved better.